So many console controllers of mine that I come to know and love. Some I personally love, while some I just flat out hate. So I'm gonna be ranking these controllers based off my personal opinion with them. And so with that, let's get her ranked. Coming in last place, we have the Joy-Con straps. Many people already know why this is. This is the last spot, so I won't be covering why. But here's why I hate it. The Joy-Con straps require so much force to remove, and you might actually get them stuck in the wrong way, and they require so much force to take off. Like, why do these things have to exist? So the one good thing I can say is that when the Joy-Con straps are off, these buttons are analog. The only no analogness I've seen on a Joy-Cons and Nintendo thing ever since the Wii controller, but I'll get to that later. But it does make the Joy-Cons more comfortable, I guess. So I guess I'll give them that. But overall, they just aren't as good as the others. Next up, we have the NES controller. Now, many people might criticize me for putting this thing so low, but let me explain why I put it so low. First, I'll talk about the good stuff about it. This thing, like this D-pad is just like, whew, that D-pad is perfect. And it's actually one of the best D-pads I used on a controller. B and A feel nice, but they feel a little mushy. That might just be from age, considering this thing was from the 80s, but still a little bit too mushy. Starting to select is decent. Like, it feels alright. And I actually do have a second Nintendo controller, but I decided not to include because I didn't want to include two controllers in the same video. So, yeah, that's why. Next up is the Wii U and the Wii remote and the nunchuck. These things get a bad rap nowadays, but I don't think the remote is complete cancer. I mean, like, look how powerful this thing is. Like, it's literally like a Joy-Con, but without an analog stick, unfortunately. Though it does replicate the NES controller if you flip it on its side, except it has a shoulder button right here. Though it's kind of like the B button if you think about it. Well, for retro games, these are the B and A buttons. I like how A is nice and big. And for the nunchuck, it's basically like a dildo. I'm trying not to be inappropriate, but I mean, this is basically just a Wii remote, but nothing but a joystick. Oh, and also two shoulder buttons, which aren't even analog. And you also use this to hook the nunchuck up to the Wii remote. So overall, I'd say these two get good grabs to me. Next up is believe it or not, the original PlayStation controller. I know this isn't a perfect controller, but this is definitely one of the best PS1 controllers I ever used, despite it being so low. I mean, first off, the D-pad is just perfect for games such as Gran Turismo. And Starting Slots really isn't that mushy to me, in my opinion. And it's strange how the shoulder buttons are the same size. Again, I'm not a fan of, but it's actually pretty nice. The face buttons actually feel great. And his controller feels nice and enhanced, to be honest. And even though this was Sony's first attempt at a controller and it didn't work that good, it still got the job done perfectly. Next up is the Nintendo Switch Joy-Con grip. I mean, this was basically the stripped down version of the Pro Controller, which I'll get eventually. Though, the main purpose of the Joy-Con grip was to slide your Joy-Cons into these slots over here. Let me just get into the right slot so I can demonstrate. And this is how they work. It's basically like a Joy-Con controller, where it's like a Pro Controller Lite. And also in this list are, believe it or not, the freaking Joy-Cons. Yes, I'm including two in one segment because why not? I'll point out the oddball in the room. The red color does look ugly on this thing. Like, why couldn't they just go with something like yellow or something? Or green? Green, like, why is this red thing so ugly? Do I do like... So the analog stick... Do I do like... And I don't understand this D-pad, like, why is the D-pad just physical buttons and not an actual D-pad? Look. Like, why is the D-pad like this and not this? Like, seriously, Nintendo, why did you make the Joy-Con D-pad like this? Though the blue one, though, whew, where do I begin with this one? I mean, the blue one just has an astonishing good finish, and the buttons have a nice click to them. And for some reason, my Joy-Cons don't get analog stick drift. I don't know how that's possible, but I guess my Joy-Cons are lucky. Yeah, and I really like the click to these buttons. And the shoulder buttons, though, don't feel that good. I mean, like, they should be analog. Like something like the PS3 controller, but I'll get to that one later. Though, despite the ugly red color on this thing, the Joy-Cons do still get the job done on this thing. Next up is the Nintendo Switch holder. Not the dock, this thing. Yes, another Nintendo accessory. You'll probably think this is like now you might think this is just like a PlayStation Portal-like scene, but it's not even close to a PlayStation Portal. Well, and this is Nintendo's just version of that. That like it's kind of like the Joy-Con grip, but it's meant to fit in the screen as well. It's strange how Nintendo was able to do that. Something like, but the PlayStation Portal advanced that, so I don't think it's perfect. Next up is the PS1 DualShock 1 and the PS2 DualShock 2. Now, these two are basically the same controllers, so I won't be covering all of it. The nice thing to have is the analog sticks. It's a bit of an improvement to the original PS1 controller, and these bits are a little rounder. And I also like this analog button. It just feels so nice to press. And the shoulder buttons are larger too. But other than that, these controllers are basically the same. So, I won't. This segment's pretty short. So because they look pretty similar, so I won't be covering everything on these two. Next up is the Wii Classic Pro. Now, I don't have the Wii Classic controller, unfortunately, but this is slightly better. Well, sadly, this thing doesn't have analog triggers again. It places the ZR and ZL buttons in a better spot, which is a nice trade-off. But why no analog shoulder buttons? Come on, Nintendo. Now, this is kind of like a PlayStation controller, but it's made for the Wii. Because, here, let me get the PS3 controller. They freaking look identical! Except for the PlayStation button's the home button. And of course, the shoulder buttons are not analog. Which I fucking hate! Well, the PS3 controller has analog triggers, but I'll get to the PS3 controller later. But overall, it is pretty comfy in the hands. And I like this gold finish as well. It's pretty comfy, to be honest. Next up is the Wii U gamepad. Now, I know this is technically a console and a handheld, not an actual controller, but I'm including it anyways. The Wii U gamepad is the biggest freaking controller I ever used. And it's also one of the greatest. I mean, you got these nice shoulder buttons despite them not being analog. And these are freaking orgasmic. And the joysticks even click in. And this is the best D-pad ever. It's even better than the NES's D-pad. And the face buttons are pretty comfy, I might say. Now, what's the point of this camera? There's not even a camera app on the Wii U. And I like that this is a home button. So it's kind of like the Wii Classic Pro, but it has a little screen on it. I didn't even know what the TV button was even for anyway, so that's pretty much all I could say about the Wii U. Oh, don't forget, this is the dock charger, and this is a charger if you don't have the charging dock. And also a little stylus right here. So that's pretty much all I could say about the Wii U gamepad. Next up is the Nintendo Wii GameCube controller. Now, I know this is not an official GameCube controller, but it is as close to perfection as you could get. For starters, start selecting home or place in the same position as the Wii Classic Pro. I won't be covering that again. But it looks exactly like a GameCube. Now, the first thing I'll point out is there's freaking analog shoulder buttons. Like, these are the greatest shoulder buttons in existence. Like, I adore these shoulder buttons, bro. And unlike the GameCube controller, there's a second ZL button. Now, I like how the ZR and ZL buttons are actually in their proper place this time. I also like the joysticks, even though they're not the official GameCube joysticks. And I do like the button selection as well. I mean, it's pretty nice. Now, the only flaw of this thing is the D-pad being way too freaking small. I do like the yellow tint to it, though. Now, that's pretty much all I could say for the GameCube controller, so it's not that bad. Next up is the Xbox 360 controller. By far, my second favorite controller. Like, this thing's a freaking juggernaut in being the true Xbox controller. Like, I'm not even going to talk about the shoulder buttons due to how great they are. The star and back buttons are have nice cookable buttons too. I also noticed that my 360 controller didn't come with didn't have an actual X on the controller like on the official Xbox 360 controller. I do like how the face buttons have a nice glossy feel to them. The one thing I don't like is the D-pad. Like, it's too flimsy and just doesn't feel right, to be honest. But overall, this controller is perfect. And number 1 goes to the PlayStation 3 controller. I mean, what else? What else can I say about this controller? This thing's freaking legendary. It's basically the DualShock 1 and 2, but they got rid of the wire and the analog button, which I actually miss, but this is still technically an analog button if you think about it. And I do like this PlayStation button that allows you to take it to the menu of the PlayStation 3s anytime. The D-pad's basically the same, so I won't be covering it again. Same for R and L. But these shoulder buttons are the best ones I ever seen. And the joysticks also have a nice texture to them. The face buttons are basically the same, so I won't be covering any other stuff. But this controller is basically the best one in existence. Well, Hot Mama was at a whole lot of controllers to count. It took me a lot of attempts to get this right, so you never know. Third time's obviously the charm. So with that, thank you guys for watching. Comment, like, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye. Sorry, PS4 is not included.